episode. As you know, I have a special guest on here, a financial coach. And the reason why we brought her on is to talk about how relationships and money and finances all go together because it is a key cornerstone. It's not the cornerstone. So, without further ado, I will let our guest introduce herself, tell you a little bit about her, and what it is she does.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that awesome introductory. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Saria, and I'm a financial coach. I've been coaching people with their finances for 7 years now. And really, I just developed a passion for helping people as I was growing up. And when I was growing up, I noticed that so many people didn't have a real plan or like a real strategy on how to use their money or how to grow their money into wealth. And I noticed that as people got older, they also didn't have a plan. And I was like, don't these people understand that one day they're going to have to stop working for money? So because of that, I decided to go into the financial sector and help people with their finances. And it's been super rewarding. I really love it.
Awesome. See that, guys? That's the type of things that we need. So, what we've done for today's show is we've actually have a list of questions for her. We're gonna be firing them off like in the Wild West, but she's prepared, and it's gonna be a fun time. We're gonna have fun. So before we get into our questions, Saria, I
Mm-hmm.
think the audience wants to know what makes somebody want to go into financial coaching. There's so many other things you could do. There's so many things. What helped you find your passion to say, yo, coaching is my thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. It definitely may not be for everyone. But really for me, like the thing that really gets me is when I can actually sit down with someone and then like you take them through the process. So like typically, I mean, people come to me in a wide range of sometimes people are just starting or like they just need like some tweaks or maybe they're in retirement and they want to know how long their money is going to last them. But regardless on wherever you're coming from, when someone sits down with me or tells me their goals or maybe some of their struggles or challenges they're facing, and then you're able to take that data and put together a plan that like, looks at all the things that they need to essentially not fix, but just make little changes and put strategies in place. And then they see it and they put it in place and it literally changes their life. And they say thank you and like they don't know what they would do if like I didn't help them. And usually people have sat down with someone else in the finance industry and maybe they were just sold a product or they weren't actually like shown a solution or some sort of education. So that for me is like a huge driving force for me. And that's actually one of the driving forces as to why I started building a team, is because I figured, hey, this is a really great impact and a really great thing that we're bringing to people. If I could build a team and, have more people helping at the same time and really creating a bigger impact, I really just want to see people do better with their money because I believe everyone can be financially independent.
I like that. I like that. So if you don't mind, hopefully we go like raw a little bit because
Yeah.
again, the industry that you're in and what it is
Mhm.
you do, did you feel that it was like a calling on your life? Like were there things that happened when you were younger that said, "Hey, like I don't know what I really want to do with my life. Let me do this." Because a lot of people don't know how to find their purpose. So
Yeah.
I had to leave like one little surprise question.
I
Um,
love it.
that's why I wanted to ask you, like, when you were like maybe in your teenagers in your younger years, was it always your plan to do it, or did you just fall into it?
Oh, I love that question. So, well, I actually hated math growing up. So the fact that I like deal with numbers and like that kind of stuff is kind of funny, because like me and math like just stay the farthest away from it. But honestly, like I never would have thought if you would tell like the 5-year-old Saria that I was going to be a financial coach and help people with their finances, like like 100%, I probably would have laughed at you and been like, that's really funny, but like probably not. What I did know is I always wanted to be in a position where I could help people and it was going to be a win-win where like I benefited but they also benefited and I didn't benefit more than them, if that makes sense,
It
right?
does.
So, long story short, when I was growing up, like my parents never gave me handouts. I never got a vehicle given to me for free. I never got like the minute I turned 18, my mom charged me rent. Like money was always something that my parents wanted me to understand and get better and like know that like no one's going to take care of you if you don't take care of your money. So that kind of got embedded into me, I guess. And then that's when I started seeing like other people not navigate their financial life, and like obviously it affects everything in your life. But my parents actually took me to a financial advisor when I was like 16 and just started working so I could save up for a vehicle. And I never knew anything like what the girl was telling me. I didn't know what was going on. Like I always left her office with more questions than I had going in. And I didn't even know I had any questions going in. So like I just figured that like if I'm feeling like this and I'm 16 and my parents are trying to get me to understand it, like I'm sure other people feel that way as well. So just going back to how I wanted to help people, we all use money every day. It's kind of important in life. So I just thought it was a really great way to actually help people and make an impact.
I love it. So you kind of like fell into the industry. You had like droplets of it like throughout your life, like your parents taking you to things, but it's like you really fell into it
Yeah.
like as you grow older. Okay, well that's a very
I
interesting.
100% tripped and felled, if that even makes sense. I 100% did.
Okay, well I'm glad. I'm glad. So guys, I know why you're here. You want to ask, okay, how does it work for relationships, Phil? And again, we
Mm-hmm.
got some good questions for her that she's going to give answers to. So I'm honestly hoping that you guys have like pens and papers because maybe you guys have either dealt with this in your relationship, either like you might deal with it. And again, the things that she's going to tell you are actually going to help your relationship be successful. So why would you not want to listen? The
Exactly.
first question: when should couples discuss finances?
Well, I think it also depends on you and like your views on relationships. Some people like to move really fast and some people like to move really slow. I personally wouldn't move really fast, but obviously talking about money in a relationship is really important. When I would say probably when you're about to get serious. Now that probably means something different to everyone. Like for me, getting serious would mean maybe moving in or getting engaged. Absolutely, by the time you're getting married, like that
Ah,
conversation needs to happen between the engagement and the marriage if it hasn't happened before. But like if you're just going on a first date with someone, or like, maybe you're in like the beginning stages, I don't think it's important to talk about finances, but I do believe it's important that at some point in time before like whatever serious is for you, whether it's actually dating or maybe bringing them over to your mom's house to meet the family, you should have something about money. Like, what are your views on it? I'd like to know yours, Michael, because you're not in the industry.
I think it's super important to have the discussion.
Yeah.
Honestly, not on a first date. Like you're not going to be like, what is your like what is your views on money, or you're not going to ask them
How
like
many investments do you
what
have?
their credit score is, or how many investments do you have. Like
Yeah.
in the beginning stages, I think you're honestly starting to like enjoy company, but I think that it should be discussed when you're bringing them into your life. Like once you've admitted to each other, like, hey, I like you, you like me. Is this going to be a thing?
Hmm.
At that point, whatever market that is, finances need to be discussed right then and there. You might disagree with me, maybe. But the reason why I'm saying that is because once you bring that person into your life and you're going into theirs, now you're spending money on dates, you're spending money on traveling, you're spending money on gifts, you're spending money on all these things. Obviously, I'm hoping that your intention is very pure when
Yeah.
you agree to make this person your girlfriend or your boyfriend, but there are some requirements that are going to come attached to that. So it's like you need to understand where they stand on money because maybe they're an excessive spender.
Yes.
Maybe they're frivolous with money.
Yeah.
Maybe they're cheap.
Ooh, we don't want that.
So that's what I'm saying. You need to figure out, no matter how much you like them, what you're bringing into your life. Because let's say you're very conservative with money.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, you're very conservative. But the
Hmm.
person that you're with spends money like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's never going to glue together.
No. And like they say that opposites attract, and sometimes like that can happen in money as well. But if opposite attracts in money, it's not going to go the way
Mm-mm.
you want it to. But you brought up a really great point, Michael. You said like you're going to do things together. You're going to go on dates,
Mhm.
and It's actually something I never really thought about, so I love that you brought it up. Because one of the reasons why I've actually heard people talk about why they don't want to date is because the financial aspect, especially if you're a male. And typically they always think males have to pay for everything, which I don't agree on. But that's we don't need to talk about that today. But it's like some people don't want to date because they feel like it's going to be I guess like stressful on their finances. But I think that if there's a good pull of like, oh, I picked up the tab here or I did that, like I don't think it's fair for one person to ever pay for everything in a relationship. But it goes back on like what are your guys' views on money? Like definitely have that conversation. And I think your mindset on money is also really important. So maybe if you're not comfortable bringing up the conversation of money or how you deal with money, like ask them like what their mindset of money is, or maybe some of their financial goals, because that'll tell you a lot about like maybe how they're actually going to handle their money. And then that can help you understand if maybe you're actually aligned together.
I agree with that. And you see, that's the thing. Me personally, I don't think a person should date if their money's not straight.
Yeah,
That's just me because and this is how I work. If you ask the girl out, you pay.
yes, yes, I like that.
You pay. So
Yeah.
you can't ask her out knowing that you can't pay.
Yes.
That
I
doesn't make sense. Now,
we'll go to the street corner.
yeah, exactly. And in retrospect, if we're being honest, you need to know who you're asking out. If you
Yes.
ask a girl out and she's all like, "Let's go to this steakhouse where it's like $200," mm, no, I don't really think so. But if
Yeah,
it's just something casual or whatever, then yeah. So you need to know who you're dealing with, especially when it comes to the topics of money.
absolutely.
Now we have more questions, but I actually have another bonus question. Just like
Mm-hmm.
in Mario Party, there's a bonus round.
Yeah. Hopefully I win. Oh man, I love being
Hopefully,
competitive.
as a couple, just
Mhm.
like like usually when people are together or they're planning to get married, that they see a marriage counselor before they get married. Do you think? And again, I actually had to Google this. Do you think that people should see a financial consultant or a financial advisor when they're when they're in a relationship?
Yes. Now, are you saying like pre-relationship, like getting serious, or like
Yeah,
actually
like
in the?
getting serious.
Yeah. So 100%. Now, with that being said, in my experience with dealing with families and couples, I have really unique couples where some of them, like I've had young couples come in where they're like younger than me and they're like putting their money together already and like having joint accounts and like they're like in it for the commitments. And I'm like, you go, Glenn Coco. Then there's people that are like they're married and they're super happy, but like their finances are completely separate. And I'm like, okay, like it's like same couple but two separate meetings. And or there's people where I mean, I don't know if they're happy. It's not really for me to say, but they'll like maybe let's say I deal with just the husband or I deal with just the wife and the other partner is like nowhere to be seen and they don't want to know what's going on because they don't really care at the end of the day.
Mm.
Like
As long as everything's taken care of, it's like they don't really.
yeah, and I've even had wives tell me before, like, "Hey, if you do ever talk to my husband, because like by law I do have to talk with them if they're
You
my
do.
client." But she's like, he knows that like let's say we have debt, but like never tell him the amount, or vice versa, maybe never tell him the amount of money we have in investments because he'll want to blow it. So that also goes back to like the talking about finances, right? Is like are you never going to want to deal with money, or do you have goals with money, or do you just want to blow the money? Like do you actually want to get wealthy? Like where are you at when it comes to finances?
Yeah, like you're exactly. And I think that is important to know that and understand that to know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
So again, great bonus question. If we were handing out gold stars, you definitely won the bonus round for that one.
Woo.
Um, so we're gonna ask another question, which I think for any audience needs to know this.
Mhm.
Does someone's finances decide if they're dateable or not?
That's like a loaded question, but I love it. So I think it can go both ways, maybe more towards the no. And the reason why I say that is if you like, let's say you're in a really bad spot financially, you're like getting eaten away by credit card debt and student loans, and you're struggling to even, let's say, make ends meet or even maybe save $25 a month. Well, I don't think it's fair to the person that you're going to be with if you have all this financial kind of like minutia in your head. You can't fully give yourself to anyone when you're dealing with that. So, in that retrospect, I would say no. If you have a solid plan on how you're going to maybe get out of it, or you're working with a financial coach like myself, and you're like, hey, listen, like my finances are kind of shot right now, but I'm working on this, and within 3 to 6 months, like, this debt will be paid off, like, then that's not a bad thing. But if you're like in the middle of it and you can't breathe almost because you feel like your finances are up to your neck, well, I don't think it's fair to get in a relationship because you're not emotionally available because you're giving your emotions to your finances. Does that make sense?
Mm. I like the sound of that. And I'm going to ask like a follow up question here. What about for the people that say it's not about the money, I care about the person?
Well,
Do you
that's
think that
100%.
there's a level of ignorance attached to that?
Well, so that could almost like go in like so many different like almost like rabbit holes, because like it's almost like when people say that money's not important or money's not
Yeah.
everything. I totally agree with you. However, money is pretty up there with oxygen. Like, you try going to the grocery store and paying with love, or paying with like your hair. Like, it's just
Here, I
not
put
gonna
some love on the counter. Take this payment. Like,
yeah, like, I'll be back to give you the money next week. So, especially when you look at, or at least for in my personal opinion, when you have a relationship, like, I want to do fun things with that person. Maybe like not everything requires money. We can go for a bike ride. We could do fun things that don't require much money. But every now and then, we're probably going to want to go for like a cool getaway, or maybe even like a music festival or a movie or a date that requires money, right? So, like, you can't just be in a relationship and like sit in a room and stare at each other all day and like tell each other you love each other. Like, that's not going to be fun either. So
no, it won't
I
be.
do believe that money can make your relationship fun, because like money gives you options. Money is a tool. That's the way I look at it. So the same with your relationship, especially if you have two people together who are maybe making really good money together. Well, now you can do fun things like maybe go to New York for the weekend, or like go to Disneyland for your anniversary. Like, that just becomes more fun. So yeah, it is
It's
important.
less of a like stress and a burden on both individuals if they have strong finance. Okay, I like that one. That's a very good answer, though.
Thank you.
Um, we actually have another one that I'm actually going to ask, and I think the audience is actually going to be like, okay, I need to hear this.
Mm-hmm.
When should you start joining assets, like pouring into a bank account? Now, as you know, I
Yeah.
sent you a video from Steve Harvey
Yeah.
covering those things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They want to hear your answer.
Well, so I agree with what Steve said. Like, I absolutely agree that you should have a joint account where you pay bills or whatever in, and then you have like your own account where it doesn't matter what you do, that's your own money. And the reason I say that is I believe that in a relationship, it's still really important to have your independence. So that also goes with your money. If you need to always check in, or if someone's always monitoring what you're doing with your finances, well, for one, I'm not going to feel like you trust me because you're always second guessing maybe what I'm buying. But it's nice to be able to, like, maybe if I see a nice blazer I want, or I go out with my girlfriends or something, if I want to spend 50, $80 or more on drinks or whatever we're doing, I can do that knowing there's money set aside for it. And I'm not going to be putting our goals as a couple backwards because now I'm taking out of a bucket that I shouldn't. You know what I mean?
Ooh, that's a good, yeah, because you're taking out of your personal bucket and not the unified bucket.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of look at that, because let's just say, like, I don't believe that you should maybe put your money into a joint account right away. Again, people move at different rates. I've had people come to me putting their money in super fast. And I've been in a relationship for like 5 years where I didn't put my money in with that person, right? Like, that it's I like my money. That is my independence.
I like my money.
I don't want somebody, like, you know what I mean? That's just not what I wanted. But what we did is, even though we didn't have a own separate bank account, we would still have like a running, like, almost like paper of all of our finances. And if rent came out of my bank account, well, then groceries and like renter's insurance and whatever was coming out of his, so that at least the money was even. And then if it wasn't even, we would even it out with like groceries or like furniture for the house or something. that can be a little bit more like you have to put a little bit more work into it. But let's just say you do end up moving in with someone, maybe you've been dating for 6 months or a year, and you want to have a joint account, but you still want to have your independence. I think a really good alternative would be have a joint account where maybe you put in $100 a month or whatever it is. Like you can have that conversation if you want to put rent in there or whatever. But I think it'd be cool if you did put money in there for things like groceries. I don't know if you guys have to pay utilities or like things
Yeah.
around the house. Maybe if you guys need some furniture, like, that's almost like the pot of money that we're going to use for like the things that are ours, right? Groceries, maybe if you want to use it for going out, you can. But then you have your own separate account where like you do whatever you want with that money. And if you want to pay bills out of it, that's cool as well.
Well, I love that. And you see, that's why I want to touch on and expand what Steve said, because
Yeah.
I think with one of the joint accounts, he said that nobody can move money out of it unless the other person, like, unless there's a co signature. How do you feel
Oh, yeah.
about things like that? Because,
Yeah. You know what? I really love that. And not that you would do it because you don't trust one another, but it's there for the trust, right? Because like sometimes if you don't have that in place, then the only way it would get put into place is if someone breaches that trust, right? But I don't know if I'd ever want to take the second step with someone who breached the trust in the first place, you
ah,
know? So you can look at it in a couple different ways. You could not put the signature on there to see how trustworthy that person is, because one of the ways a lot of people can maybe do shady things in a relationship, I find, is financial, right? Like obviously
yep,
you don't want someone pulling like taking money away from you or like lying or not that financial is cheating, but kind of you're cheating on your financial goals. So that could be like a little test. You know what I mean? I don't think there's anything wrong with testing people in that little way.
no.
But I also really love the signature. Like, I don't think that there's a wrong way you can do it. Really, I mean, no one can tell you what to do. It's whatever you think is going to be best for you and that person. I think maybe having the conversation and just having it as like an open, natural conversation and just hearing out both sides. And, you know, if you guys feel like you guys could do it without a signature, great. You know what I mean? Maybe if my partner was like super bad with money and like he had like impulse buys, then maybe I'd put a signature on it because that's kind of risky, But if we were like mature adults and like we're not just gonna like take it, I think you could go either way.
Well, let's talk about that, because again, I'm going to throw some like bonus questions in here.
I
I'm
love
just
it.
going to
Do
throw some awesome. You
it.
talked about a compulsive spender,
Yeah.
right? If you're dating somebody, would that be a hindrance on you if they were a compulsive spender? Because I know that we've had the discussion privately where like you're like, well, what if they bought like $1,000 TV and you're like, yo,
We didn't
like
need a TV.
like
We
we
have
didn't need a
four.
TV, but it's like even if it was from their personal account, like yes, it is still their money, but then at the end of the day, you're like, well, what about what we're doing here?
Yeah. Oh, I like that. So, well, this is the way I look at that too, is like, even though it's their own money, like that's fine. But if it's going to interfere with the goals that you have as a couple, then it becomes a problem. So, for example, if you're like trying to save up to go to Disneyland, let's say your 1 year
Yeah.
anniversary is coming up in 3 months, and you're like, hey, we got to save up $3,000 each to go to Disneyland. Okay, $1,000 a month. That's not. It shouldn't be that difficult, or hopefully it's not that difficult for you. But if let's just say, especially if you have a goal and then you're like blowing your money on something else, which in turn results in you coming short on your goal, then like in my opinion, there's a lot of different things that comes to that. Now the person doesn't have self-discipline because he can't discipline himself to not spend for 1 to 3 months to do something that's important for both of us. It almost feels like he doesn't really care about the relationship enough to put in the effort to be like, hey, do I really need this $1,000 TV when we have four at home? Probably not. I don't watch four TVs at once, Um, but like the way people act around those kinds of things can tell them a lot of things about them, like kind of like internally, right? It's like if he's gonna do that with money, well, in my opinion, what else is he gonna do that on, right? Like, is he gonna lie
Mm.
to you about where he goes or what he does or who he's with? Like, you know what I mean?
I agree with you, and that's why, as I said, I'm giving you these spitfire questions. We still have other questions, but
Ooh, I like it.
see, how do I guess the question I want to ask you more than anything is how do you have the conversation about money? And again, I'm going to dive deep because that's just what I do. When you're dating someone, let's say for example, right? We know that let's say someone buys a $6 Starbucks a day, 5 days a
Mhm.
week, right?
Yeah.
That tallies up a year. So if
Oh,
you're dating somebody and you're like, let's say for example, you're like, babe, like you spend a lot at Star. How do you introduce that conversation?
ooh, I really like that. Well, there's a couple different ways. You could ask what their goals are because you could tie it into them. Like, like, do you have any financial goals you're currently working towards? And if he says, no, or maybe he says yes. If he says yes, obviously you want to expand and figure out what those goals are. And, if he has a plan kind of to get there. And if he doesn't, then the reason why I brought it up is I was just thinking, like you've got this goal, but I see you going to Starbucks every day. And have you ever thought about like how much faster you could reach that goal, even if you went to Starbucks every second day instead of every day? And then that might be able to open up that
Right,
conversation.
plant some seeds.
Yeah, because like you don't want to like attack someone or tell them what to do, but you really just want to open up the conversation and ask questions and understand their perspective. Like, like maybe you're going to Starbucks with them and you can be like, you go to Starbucks every day, hey, or like maybe not like that. That kind of seemed a little rude, but and just kind of see like maybe there's a reason why he goes to Starbucks every day. Maybe it's a comfort thing for him. Maybe that's the way he shows self-care. Like you can't always judge on the outside
Mm.
what someone's doing because everyone has a motive as to why they do it, right? So like maybe that is the one thing every day that he really enjoys, right? So I wouldn't ever want to take that away from him unless it's not allowing him to reach his goals. But I do believe that talking about goals and also the way that your parents dealt with money growing up will help you give kind of give like an insider's perspective of maybe what that person is thinking about money because like the way that we all learn and pretty much understand what money is the way that our parents either taught us and or the way that they talked about money when we were growing up in their household. Would you agree?
I do, yeah, of course.
Perfect. So if you're living in a household where, money was the root of all evil and, the wealthy just get wealthier and like all they talked about money in a negative way, well then sometimes people could spend a lot because they don't feel like money is not important to them, or maybe it's vice versa where they try to keep all their money because they like don't want to be in that position, but they're also not doing it in a way that's like getting them ahead, if that kind of makes sense. Like they're just like hoarding it, but it's not like it's not investing, it's not doing anything. Like they're just cheap. You know what I mean? There's a
Yeah.
difference between being cheap and also
And
achieving your
frugal.
goals. Yeah, exactly. Right. Like I never ever tell anyone to not buy something, you know what I mean? But it's like, let's look at your spending habits or where you're putting your money and just see if there's little opportunities that we can cut back or do something, right? Because you still want to enjoy your life. So like going back to the guy going to Starbucks every day, you don't want to tell him not to do the things that bring him joy. Sometimes you just kind of want to understand, like, you know, why are you doing it? You know what I mean? Without
I
asking,
like
why are
it.
you doing this? That
I
makes
like
sense.
it. Well, I'm going to put myself on the hot seat because, again, and you can correct me if I'm wrong at any time. What I've always done when it comes to money or finances, because I like personal development, it's what
Mm-hmm.
I do, reading books about relationships, dating, finances, all other stuff.
Yep.
If I was in that scenario, and you can step in at any time, I will slip them a book
Ooh.
on finances. That's what I will do. I will
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, I've read this book. This
Yeah.
helps me out with XYZ. Like we all know, Think and Grow Rich,
Yeah.
The Wealthy Investor, anything to do with investing.
Dad, poor dad.
Yeah, exactly. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, anything. I will slip it into them to kind of plant the seed, not to insult them, to say, like, I think you're terrible with money,
Well,
but
yeah, 'cause you
more
never
as
want to
an,
say that, right? Like you never want to be negative, and that's like
no.
that's why you want to try to get them to talk, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Like, because if they're like, well, why are you giving me this? Well, because I will tell them, we're a together thing now. So what we do, even individually, still affects
Yeah.
what we have together. As you said, if I go out and buy $1,000 TV, yes, it's from my personal account, but it still hinders
Yeah.
what we might build together.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
that's how I do it. I just slip them a book. I find it easier. I find it's less intrusive and being like, hey, stop spending your money.
I really love that. And I didn't even really think of something like that before, but it makes a lot of sense. And I actually have, like, speaking of The Wealthy Barber and The Rich Dad Poor Dad, I have like this Reader's Digest version with pictures, which is really awesome. But it pretty much like summarizes all the financial concepts they talk about in those books. And it's all the concepts that I teach my clients, like Rule 72, how to get time on your side, dollar cost averaging, all the stuff that you need to know in order to actually win in finances. So yeah, that's actually a really great. I love that.
Yeah, that's what I did. And, even in my past relationship, and again, I think a lot of times we have no excuses.
Yeah.
I have Audible. I listen to a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
audiobooks. So what I'll do is all the books that Saria mentioned, I will be like, here's my Audible account. Go listen to this on finances.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
car, they can listen because some people are not avid readers. So I'll be
Totally.
like, you could listen to it at the car,
Yeah.
when you're at the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a great incentive to help somebody also in that aspect because my other question that we're going to ask you is why is money such a sensitive topic in a relationship?
Ooh. Well, I also think, like I said previously, it goes with the way that you were brought up. So, like, our money kind of like myths almost, like they stay with us. So, going back to how money is the root of all evil, if your parents like grew up saying that, you're going to have that like belief in you, right? So, if
Yeah.
you're with someone who wants to make a bunch of money, well, you're almost going to feel like they're evil. But one of the reasons why it's like taboo to talk about is, well, a couple of reasons is you don't want to look dumb. Like no one wants to admit that they don't know about their money, especially when we use it every day. Um,
Especially when you make it and you don't know how to use it.
exactly. That's such a great point. I love that. You literally make it. You trade your time for money, right? Like, come on now. It's like two of the biggest commodities in life. But also, people don't want to be taken advantage of. And I say this like working in the financial industry, there's a lot of ways that you can get taken advantage of in the financial industry. So a lot of people are scared to talk about it, whether it's their partner or a friend, because they don't want to be taken advantage. They don't want to look dumb, and they don't want to really. They don't also know where to look for answers, right? That's where I come into play. I'll send you that book. But that's really the three reasons why are those, but also that nobody has a real plan or a financial coach to help them and actually help them carry along throughout their financial game plan and really make strong decisions. Because what a lot of people don't realize is little tiny decisions you make every day with your finances are actually what makes the big picture of your finances. So people will say like, I don't want to ask for help because I don't make enough or something. But it's like, that's actually not true. If you got the help, you could make enough. You know what I mean? But really, it's just, yeah, people don't want to be taken advantage of.
I like that. That's awesome. So again, I got those were some of those were bonus questions, and now we got like some like questions. What is the number one thing you've seen in your financial career that splits people up?
Oh, just not being on the same page. Like there's actually a stat that like over 50% of the divorces are because of financial concerns. Like just like I said with my clients being like separate, like they're still together. You're not saying that just because you don't agree you're not going to end up like together or happy, but you'll have a better and a stronger relationship if you're on the same page and you can work towards the same goals. You can have open conversations about money, because anything that you talk about more, it's going to become easier, right? Just like how you start your first job and you don't really know what you're doing the first day, but the second day it gets easier, and the third day you kind of could probably do it without somebody right beside you. It's the same thing about talking with finances in your relationship. If you don't ever bring up the conversation, well, then odds are you and your partner are probably not going to be very strong financially. I strongly, strongly believe that, because the people who come to me as a couple or even as individuals but have goals that will be a couple goal, they achieve them faster. They have like, bigger dreams, especially because they're able to talk about them together. And it's not like this dream that they have together, but one partner's not really like, being like not really like working, so like this partner's trying really hard, but then they're also trying to carry the weight of this partner, and then like it all just kind of crumbles. That's what I
And I
usually
love
see.
that you said that because, again, as I said, I'm just on the podcast. I love to just spit questions, and I had to do like a lot of research
Yeah.
to bring you even more surprise questions.
Yay.
Would you say, and this is another question, would you say it's a financial issue or a lifestyle issue? And the reason why I brought that up is because some people want a certain lifestyle. They want to travel, they want finances, they want a nice home, nice car, and then the other person just wants right in the middle. So is that more of, because you brought up the point of wanting different things, is it a
Yeah.
different lifestyle?
You know what? That is it, it absolutely is one of the like many that you can go down, because I see it as well where like this person, let's just say the guy, he wants the big truck, he wants the nice
Mm.
watch, he wants all the things that his friends can see, and the female maybe wants to like go on a trip but really wants to like put their kids through school and like maybe retire early because she wants to spend life with her kids. Well, yeah, that kind of contradicts, but I see it a lot where people like finance their whole life away. And on the outside, they have this amazing lifestyle. But then when you look at it from the other side, it is dangerous. And they barely have what they have. So yes, it's kind of a little bit of both, to be honest, because it can go both ways. But yeah, the lifestyle gap is almost like what I call it, is one of the biggest things outside of debt that really kills people from getting ahead. Is you have $5,000 in your account, let's just say, and you go buy a watch, or you go take a trip. It's so different when people get their tax refund. They get a big tax refund, they think they did something great. All you did is just give the government an interest-free loan. He gives you your money back, you go on a trip. Well, why did you do that? Like, invest it, do something, like get ahead. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, just don't.
Well, I'm going to add something. I think for a lot of times for dating, that would disqualify an individual from you dating them. And I'll say
Mhm.
why. Because if you want a certain lifestyle, let's say you want to travel, you want
Yeah.
nice things, that requires a certain amount of money. But let's say the other person just wants to do their 9 to 5, come home, and that's it.
Yeah.
Me personally, I think it's better for you to pass on that person. And I'll tell you why.
Hmm.
The lifestyles don't match.
No, they don't. You're right.
It doesn't mean that one person's lesser than the other, but the lifestyles don't compute, because if one person doesn't want to travel, so they
Mm.
want to conserve money,
Yeah.
the other person wants to make a bunch of it so they can travel and not have money be a concern.
Yeah.
For me, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that would be a problem for somebody splitting up financially, because they'll say, well, I want to stay at home and just go to work and come home and maybe go to local events, but you want to travel the world and do all these other things.
Hmm.
Our lifestyles, we're not on the same page.
Yeah. Well, and it's bang on. It goes back to the whole like what separates people. It's not being on the same page, because just like you said, living the 9 to 5 and doing things, like share your goals with your partner, because like if your money goals are to have this like extravagant lifestyle where you want to travel all the time and all that kind of stuff, but then your partner doesn't, well, you need to figure out if that's going to work, because at some point in time you're probably going to have some friction where
Uh,
it might not even be what your partner is angry at for, but he may throw it in your face like, oh, you just want to go, live this extravagant lifestyle and I'm just happy being here. Like, why can't you just be happy with what we have? And like that line is what gets a lot of people in trouble, because it's like, it's not that I'm not happy with what I have. It's just that I want this and you're the one that's happy with what we have, right? So then it's
mm,
conflict, right?
yes, see, that's a wow. Yeah, exactly. See, because I do see that happening a lot to
Mm-hmm.
a lot of couples.
And that's why you should
Um,
talk about your goals. Cause like, I'll just give you a personal example.
sure.
I want to have a lot of money. I want to have an extravagant lifestyle. But the reason for it behind it is so that I can have options, freedom, and security to do what I want when I want with my family. but mainly so that if my family ever got sick or anything happened to my family, hey, don't worry, mom, we're going to jump on my private plane. I'm going to fly you to Panama. You're going to get treatment in 4 hours. Like, we don't have that option if I didn't have money, or if I didn't, not that I have it now, like, not that I have a plane, but like, that is a goal for me, because that is like, in one of the, anytime that you look at like people who are wealthy, I always love looking at like, what does money actually do for them? What does it unlock? It unlocks options. There is a cure for cancer out there, but you only get it if you have money. So for me, like, if I was with a partner who wanted to take me away from that goal, we wouldn't
Ah,
work out, because it's not that I don't want to be with you, but you think me like wanting to do that for my family is too much, or it's not going to happen, or like, you know what I mean? Like,
the
that's,
lifestyle is like don't compute because it's like,
yeah,
and that's what I'm saying. Like for a lot of people in those situations, they feel more pulled away from their goals than pulled closer to them because you
exactly.
guys want different things.
And
I
maybe
love.
even if you have different things, but you can be super supportive and like find common ground,
Mhm.
that might not be the worst thing in the world either. Everyone is very different,
It's
but as long
just a
as it works
big risk. It's just
100%.
a big risk because it's easier to date somebody that thinks the way you do
Yeah.
than to date somebody that doesn't think that way. And yes, they're still supportive, but
Hmm.
it's like at the same time, it's like when you're like skyrocketing up to the top and they're supportive, but then they're very comfortable in their bubble. It's like now you feel alone because
Hmm.
we've all heard the stories of people that are like very successful guys or girls that skyrocket up to the top,
Yeah.
but then like their spouse is like, yeah, I'm watching you from the bleachers. And you're like, I want you to come play the game with me.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Yep, for sure.
I
And
don't
that's
want you to
something
be
that
a
you have to,
fan. I want you to be a teammate.
yeah. I think that's something you have to figure out, is if you want a teammate or if you want like a supporter.
A
Like, do you know what I
fan.
mean?
Yeah, either you're going
Yeah.
to get a fan that's going to cheer you on from the crowd, or you want a teammate.
Yeah. And
So,
I think it's important to play both roles, right?
oh,
But
100%.
it's
But like your
really, yeah,
teammate is your fan, but like a fan is never ever going to go to the top. They'll show up at every game, they'll do all
yeah,
those things, but they're not in the trenches
exactly.
with you.
Yes, bang on.
Um, so our next question for our guest is: should somebody fix their finances before they date?
Ooh, well, yes and no. So like, you absolutely should. Going back to like, if you are like, you can't, like, you're up to your neck in finances, and like you can't even like think straight because you're such in a bad financial situation. Yeah, absolutely fix that before you even like download Bumble or whatever you do. You know what I mean? But like, I think it really depends on your situation. But yeah, like, if your situation is like, if you can't talk about your situation with like someone who's really close to you, whether it's your mom or even a financial person, then maybe you're maybe not ready for a relationship, because there's something in there that like you're kind of like, you're not wanting to share, right? And in a relationship, it's important to be open to share, because anything that you hold back is really holding your relationship back. And
Well, it's
finances,
gonna bite you in the bottom too.
exactly. And you don't want to be with someone like, let's just say, the male is like super financially like well off or something, and you're dating this female, and she hasn't really told you much about her money, but then 3 4 months into the relationship, you guys are really liking each other, and she opens up to you about her money, and she's like in this totally complete financial mess, and like, even if you tried to get a place together, she could never get approved. Well, like, not saying that that wouldn't work, but you'd have to decide if that's something that like you're willing to work with her to get it. You know what I mean? And then if you are, that person also has to be willing to receive the help, because you can't want it more than the other person, right? So yes, I do
Mm.
think that you should fix your finances.
Well, again, I actually have like a major question for you.
Yes.
Something that I studied for the last couple days.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the fence about asking it to you, but I'm going to ask it anyways. How do you feel about statistics?
Oh, well, I don't really feel bad about them.
No, but I meant like, do you think that there are any facts in statistics, or are you just like this is made up?
Oh, well, I think it goes both ways. I'm sure that, well, there is a statistic that like most of the statistics are made up. So I'm not going to doubt that they're made up, but I do like them, because even if they're made up, it helps give people context of like, oh crap, that percentage of the universe doesn't know what the heck they're doing, you
Well, the
know?
reason why I brought it up is because you brought up like the divorces and stuff.
Yeah.
According to a statistic, and you can look at it, it's out there.
Hmm.
Majority of women carry more debt than men do.
Okay.
I don't know, like, do you feel that, like, and again, do you feel that more women need to be educated on finances? Because I know
Yeah.
that we've had stories, again, like, I've read them, I've heard about them, where the woman knows nothing about the finances and
Yeah.
the man knows more about the finances and what's going on in the home. And then,
Hmm.
let's say something happens to the man,
Yeah.
then the girl's like, kind of like, the wife's kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Financially devastated.
So that's why I asked you that question, statistically wise, is again, I read the statistic. It said women carry majority of debt. Do you feel that with the time that we're in now more than ever, that women should get financially illiterate?
Yes, absolutely. It is so important now more than ever. And I love that you actually brought that up, Michael, because one of the things that I actually have an all women investment club because me and a group of ladies are really working on keeping more money in the hands of women because there's a couple statistics that I can share with you. Women actually make better financial decisions and we're better financial managers than men just because of our
Okay.
motherly instincts. We live longer, so oftentimes we end up being the people or the person that takes over the finances and or deals with our parents' finances. So it's very important that we know how to deal with finances. Also, because we're the ones that typically end up taking maternity leave if you're going to have kids, obviously, females usually take more time off of work. And I know we talked about this in the past. You
We
didn't
did.
really agree with this. Females sometimes can make less than men. That gap
Okay.
is being closed, but in some areas, especially different areas or different job positions, it still is where females are being lower paid. So that's why we have more debt is because of that because of being a mom. Like it's not always easy. Then if you're a single mom, and there's a lot of single moms who don't get support from their whatever other half, and so maybe they have to use debt to actually pay for their kids diapers or something like that. um, but I mean, at the end of the day, whether you're a male or a female, most people have debt. Like 80% of the world probably has debt, right? It's financial cancer. It's what literally robs people from getting wealthy.
And I
And we
love that you brought that up. And that's why I love that you said the statistics. And I think the statistics just give us some ballpark understanding of certain things. It doesn't mean that it's 100% true, but there's like a level of understanding for us to say maybe we need to look at this.
totally. Well, it was like something staggering, like 76 or 80 some percent of females that took a basic financial literacy quiz failed. And like it's because if you look at like history history was the female was completely left in the dark about finances. The male took care of absolutely everything, just like what you were saying, Michael. The male passes away because males do pass away before women life insurance premiums are slightly higher because we live longer, or sorry, males are because they die sooner. Sorry, I said it the wrong way. But so that's why like we're trying to make the switch of like, hey, that can't be that way. And especially because now there's so many more women becoming leaders and really making that like main breadwinner income in the family. They need to know what's going on in their finances, especially if they're going to make more, if not the same as men. I think anyone, whether you're a female or men, need to know about finances, but women especially, we really do get left in the dark.
Well, I think, and again, I'm glad that you brought that up. And the reason why I bring that up is because it's so important because of the aspect of if the male dies and you have kids, they need
Yeah,
to be properly taken care of. And if she's been kept in the dark about the finances, then she can't do that appropriately
totally.
to take care of your lineage.
Yeah.
So that's more of a hindrance.
Well, and then you pass that on generationally. So if you're a single mom who now is widowed and you have kids and you're struggling, you don't really know what's going on financially, your kids now grow up in that environment and they see you worry about money and pinch pennies at the grocery store and all that kind of
Or
stuff. And
coupons.
Yeah, and it's like then they grow up thinking that that's the way life is, and you're going to struggle financially, and money is bad because we never had a lot of it. And like, it's not just the financial literally aspect of you, but it's your whole generational tree. Like, one thing I love is creating generational wealth for my clients, allowing them to get wealthy, because it's not just them that gets wealthy, it's their whole family. They're able to deal with money so much better, and that in itself is freedom, and that is security.
Wow, and that's a good way to put it. And that's what I'm saying. Like all these topics and things that we brought up, guys, it's not to attack men or women, but it's to help both parties understand that
Exactly.
money is going to play a key component in the relationship that you guys develop. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Especially as Saria said, yeah, you can do free stuff, but at some point you're gonna want to go out for lobster. You're gonna want
Oh.
to go out for steak. And when the waiter comes and he says it's time to pay, and you're like, "Well, I'm gonna pay you with hugs," he's gonna be like, "You better get out that checkbook, bro." Like,
We're doing dishes in the back for
yeah, or
4
you're
hours.
doing dishes in the back. Like, you better get out that checkbook.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes for some people it's a hard subject to talk about because,
Mhm.
again, as Saria said, the pain in the family or
Yeah.
not understanding it. But I think a lot of times, especially what I want you guys to take away from this podcast, is how can you not understand the tool, which is money, when you make it? It's
Yeah.
like if I give you a key to open a door, but you use a key to like chop wood, you're not using the tool correctly. Like you're using it
Exactly.
incorrectly. So it's like, I think a lot of times people need to, like, yes. And again, you can correct me if I'm wrong. People's finances might be a mess. It doesn't define you, but you can educate yourself to come to a place to say, okay, I need to fix this. And the only way to fix it is to look at it and to actually address it, the elephant in the room, that my finances are maybe lackluster,
Yeah.
and address the problem.
Totally. Because one thing I can guarantee you is if you ignore the problem and continue to ignore it, it will never get better and you will never be happy, whether it's financially, emotionally, whatever. Because whether you agree with me or not, like um, money is like not the root of all evil, but it's the root of a lot of things you feel. If you don't have money, I can guarantee you your mood's not going to be the same because you're worried about money. You put money in your bank account, oh, that worry goes away. We can have way more fun. I'm going to be laughing more. Like, as much as people don't want to think money is like tied to a lot of stuff, money cannot buy happiness, but it can make you happier just knowing that you don't have to sit there and stress about it.
And I love that you said that because, again, I feel like with a lot of people, it's like their mindset is like, let's say you get bit by a rabid animal and you're just like, I'm fine, la di da di da di da. And then you get sick and then you go to the doctors and they're like, yeah, we might have to cut your leg off. And you're
Yeah.
like, but why? And then the doctor's like, well, if you would have come to us when it first bit you,
Yeah,
we wouldn't have to chop off your leg.
exactly.
So I feel like when it comes to finances, like, yes, it a lot of times it is the number one stressor for a lot of people,
Yep.
but it's also understanding that you could turn that stress into a positive just by fixing it. So I,
Hmm.
I guess our last question for the day is, how do people fix their finances? How do
Man,
they go about doing it? Because I've read the books, you've read the books. Some people say it's better to pay off the bigger debts to the smaller ones. Some people say it's better to do the smaller ones to the bigger ones.
hmm. Well, so everything is super like individually based.
I
But
like that.
general rule of thumb I'll say is, speaking of the big debts, it was the like common misconception, or I shouldn't say misconception. It's a myth that our parents' generation grew up with. Buy a house, it's going to be the greatest investment and whatever. That is a myth that the banks wanted you to believe because the banks give you mortgages and they make a lot of money off of mortgages. They also want you to pay off the mortgage so it's more money that the bank gets. I'm here to tell you, I do not work with the bank. I work against them. I will tell you all the secrets the bank does not want you to know about money. And that's one of the reasons why my clients love to work with me. But like for a mortgage, for instance, so many of my clients come to me and they say, I'm really trying to pay off my mortgage. And my first question is why? Why are you trying to pay off your mortgage? It doesn't make any sense to
Mm,
me. Do you go to, let's just say the place I rent, Am I going to go there and say, I'm just going to pay you my 6 months rent right now? Like, I understand that people don't want to have debt. You still want to pay your mortgage off by the time you get to retirement. But if you're like 30 or 40, and especially if you're making good money, don't be putting all your extra money into your mortgage, because if anything were to happen, you can't go back to that mortgage company and say, hey, I paid you an extra 50 grand these last 4 months. Can I get it back because now I'm in financial trouble? They're going to say, sorry, buddy, you gave us the money.
Mm.
You put that 40 grand into your investments and shit hit the fan, man, you can take that 40 grand for one. It's also sitting there earning you interest, keeping you up with inflation. And in 10 years, that's going to be more than 40 grand. And like you want to take care of yourself. So like the reason why I say that is your mortgage is always going to be the cheapest money you ever borrow. Most mortgage rates are under 3% or maybe even under 5%. Unless you're getting closer to that 5%, maybe we'd want to look at a refinance or, something like that. But especially if you're under 3%, friggin', you probably got insurance that's going to pay for that mortgage by the time you die. Like, you enjoy that money. Do not give it to the bank because they're not going to do anything
Mm.
good with that.
Well,
You will.
again, now that you brought it up, because I was like, okay, we're going to end the show, but now that you brought it up, there's a there's like a lasting standing question I want to ask you based off of what you said, and this
Yeah.
has to tie into relationships. And again, I'm glad that we talked about it. I
Hmm.
think for a lot of couples, and this is a hard pill to swallow. One couple might say, I want to own a home, and the
Yeah.
other one doesn't. How do you get around that?
Well, I think you, again, just have to talk about it and figure out, like, why do you want to buy the home? Like, what is it about the home that you want to buy? Do you just want to buy the home because it's what your parents keep telling you? I've literally sat down with people who go, my parents talked me into buying a home for the last 4 years. I bought a home. I'm miserable. It's so much money. I don't want it. I can't get rid of it. They bought their parents' belief that they needed a home. They did not need a home.
Mm.
Anyone who's under 30, especially, you do not need a home. Rent. Like, just rent. There's nothing wrong. I have no problems with my clients renting for the rest of their lives. Like, you do not
Well,
need to
that's
own.
why I brought it up because, again, you see, a lot of people, as you said, will follow the blueprint of they need to own their home. But
Yeah,
then people like me and you that read the books and read what the wealthy do, they don't do that. Their mindset is you should only buy a home if you can buy it 10 times cash.
exactly. And if you want to buy a home, well, do you want to buy it because you want to rent out the basement? In that case, just buy an investment property. Like, if you want to own real estate, you're never going to make money if you live in the property. If you want to make money in real estate, you have to not live in it. Okay, so if you want to buy a home, buy it, but make money off of it and then rent where you live. That's what the wealthy do, right? Now, if you do, like, if one partner wants to buy a home and the other one doesn't, yeah, have that conversation, but also look to see, like, what's your future goals. One of the reasons why I never wanted to buy a home was I don't feel like I'm going to live in one place very long for the next couple of years. So like, if I buy a home here, I'm stuck to that home for the next 20 years. What if I don't want to live here for the next 20 years? So, like, you really have to think forward and, like, okay, if you buy a house today and it has 3 bedrooms, well, how many kids do you want to have? Are you going to have to upsize in a year? Because I've also had people do that. And then you're not really getting ahead. You're actually just starting over again. You know what I mean? So, like, I think I can't give like general advice because it depends on everyone. But I will say that a home is not the greatest investment. And I really don't believe that anyone should prioritize a home unless, like, maybe you have a giant family or something. But I don't know. In the world we live in today, it's not it's not going to be the security or the best investment that everyone, wanted us to believe.
Well, I love it. Well, look, guys, thank you again for tuning in with this podcast. I greatly appreciate it. Look, if you guys want to follow Saria or even get financial coaching from her Instagram is going to be down below. Guys, I'm one of her clients.
Yeah.
So, again, I was a little ignorant, but I'm one of her clients. So, guys, look, if you want even just, a consultation, if you want something, anything like that, her Instagram is going to be down below. You can DM her. She'll help you out. She'll, help you sort out some investments or whatever it is you need to get your life on the right track. And even so you can even start possibly dating and feel comfortable with your finances for you to do certain things. So again, her Instagram is going to be down below. You can follow her there. I believe she also has her link tree in her bio for you to book a consultation with her
Mhm.
as well. So she provides you all the tools that you need to get in touch with her. And, we really appreciate you taking the time to break down why finances are important, why you shouldn't be ashamed of your finances, and also understanding that maybe if your finances are a mess, maybe you shouldn't date. If they're
Maybe
great,
you're a mess. I'm just
yeah,
kidding.
yeah, maybe you're a mess. Exactly. You don't know because we are a reflection of the things on the outside.
Totally.
So again, maybe your finances are a mess. Maybe you need to take a break from dating. Maybe if your finances are good, maybe you should start dating. But you should also understand that what you're getting into financially with somebody, especially if they carry a lot of debt, especially if they're not good with money. Any
Yep.
plans that you try to make, as sorry as said, it's going to pull the relationship back.
Hmm.
And that could actually break up the relationship where you're like, I don't want to be with you. You keep spending money on TVs and Birkin bags and all these other things that are never going to benefit the relationship. And look, guys, I'm going to be honest. I've been in that place. Like even myself, if I'm dating somebody, like we all have hobbies. And as sorry as said,
Hmm.
we all have things that we like. Maybe you like your Starbucks $6 a day. Guys, I'm a hardcore gamer. I'm an avid gamer. Gaming is not
Hmm.
a cheap hobby. It is not. Buying all the consoles every 4 or 5 years. Even I think to myself, I'm like, man, if I didn't buy that console this year, I could have had some extra money. But it's a very expensive, costly habit. But I've learned now to tone down when it comes to me buying games all the time and stuff like that because I'm more invested in my future.
Exactly. Love it. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah,
Love
anytime, anytime. So take care, guys. Like the stream, share, subscribe, do whatever. You can listen to us on Spotify, iTunes. And if you guys want Saria back, just please like the podcast and share and subscribe.